But Zara Anderson pressed the self-destruct button when she became addicted to heroin. Today, her fall from grace was complete. Case numbers 1 to 22 at King's Lynn Magistrates Court, a far cry from her previously exclusive existence. She'd moved to this hostel in King's Lynn after arriving in West Norfolk homeless. Now surviving on benefits of £110 a week, magistrates had previously heard that Anderson stole a tub of custard from this store to feed her 3 children. She'd also tried to cash a stolen cheque at another King's Lynn supermarket, one of 35 offences admitted in court, including failing to provide a breath test. Appearing for sentence, Anderson, who's still receiving medication for her former addiction, escaped a jail term. Sentencing her to 2 years probation, Chairman of the bench Brian Devlin told Anderson, "You are a very lucky lady. I hope you've learned a lesson." Tonight, the former high society player is back in temporary accommodation, free to look after her children.
Mrs. Anderson has instructed me to make a brief statement on her behalf. She would like to thank all the agencies that have helped her during what has been a trying time for both herself and her family, and she looks forward to rebuilding her life and devoting her time to looking after her children.
Despite the couple's separation, Zara Anderson's husband Patrick told Look East he'd attended the court to show moral support. Magistrates too appeared in generous mood, waiving over £2,000 in outstanding court fines. Julian Sturdy, Look East, King's Lynn.
He's been called the most hated man in farming. Oliver Walston says farm subsidies should be scrapped. His fellow farmers are furious. We'll be talking live to Mr. Walston in a moment, but before that, Mike Liggins looks at the background.
So how many more tons can you carry?
Oliver Walston farms 2,000 acres at Triplow, not far from Cambridge. He believes most farm subsidies should be scrapped and has been saying so loud, clear and very publicly.
I'm the sort of farmer you're really going to hate. I have a big farm, you have big fields, big machinery, I use a lot of agrochemicals, and what's more, you, the taxpayer, send me a cheque every Christmas time for £180,000. Thanks very much.
Mr. Walston has just completed a series for BBC television in which he expanded on his views, and some farmers are furious.
Oliver Walston strutting about his farm, bragging about his wealth in the first of his series, would lead any self-respecting farmer to reach for the bucket.
Ken Goodger, who farms just 82 acres at Welney, is one of those reaching for a bucket. He isn't thrilled with Oliver Walston sounding off about subsidies.
We are dependent on subsidies with our cereal enterprise because the cereals are not making us any money at today's prices, and the subsidies that we receive take that crop from being a loss to a profit. Which would mean that if we were totally dependent on cereals, we wouldn't make any money at all.
It would appear that most farmers would like Oliver Walston to simply shut up and go away. He says that's not an option. Mike Liggins, Look East, Triplow in Cambridgeshire.
Oliver Walston is at his home in Cambridgeshire. Why shouldn't the farmers get the subsidy, Mr. Walston?
Well, they should for the time being. That farmer from Welney is absolutely right. If you cut out subsidies tomorrow, we'd all go bust. I would, just like him. But in 5 years' time, if the people in Brussels gave us 5 years to get our act together, then I reckon we could just about manage without subsidies and everyone would be a lot happier.
But a lot of farmers need this money. I mean, many of them go bust at the moment. They're going to struggle without it.
They won't necessarily struggle without it because all our costs will go down. The people who will struggle, of course, will be the people who've just bought a lot of land for £3,500 an acre and who've got very, very high costs indeed. Those people will struggle. But why should one be sympathetic to those people?
Why should, though? I mean, for years farming has got this money. People have learnt to depend on it.
That's why you can't get rid of subsidies overnight. That's why what I'm saying is you've got to have 5 years, Brussels should say, you've got 5 years, and at the end of 5 years, you won't have any, but in the meanwhile, you've got to get your act together.
So have you sent your £180,000 back from last Christmas?
No, I'd go bankrupt immediately if I did that. I repeat, if one got rid of subsidies tomorrow night, I and every other farmer in East Anglia would go bust. But I'm not suggesting it now. I'm suggesting give us 5 years and say at the end of that, if you haven't got your act together, too bad.
You're making a lot of money out of making these television programmes, aren't you, and sounding off. Is that why you do it?
No, I've been sounding off for the last 10 years. Some nice people from the BBC said, come and sound off on television. So I said, fine, why not? And you said, come and sound off this evening, and you're not paying me a thing, unless you know something I don't.
No, I don't know anything you don't, Mr. Walston, but thank you very much for joining us.
Okay.
Well, later in the programme, Ivor's here with the weather, and take a look at this. The 80th birthday party.
Part of the fencing is missing, stolen by vandals. Council engineers are concerned.
This is a temporary railing we've had to put up where the proper railings were stolen, leaving a gap which could be very hazardous or even tragic for someone easily to fall over.
Nearby road signs have also been taken, but it's the cost of repairing the bridges that hits the council hardest.
I have about £84,000 a year, which I have to spread evenly over 630 odd bridges. So as you can see, we've got about 6 bridges in the area at the moment which have been vandalised, and that represents £50,000 or £60,000 worth, or almost a year's maintenance budget.
Police say it's not just the cost of the damage, it's also the potential cost of human lives.
There's not only a danger to the pedestrians who are using the bridge to cross, but also to the motorists driving underneath. If there's no railing to protect the pedestrians, then there's obvious dangers for the motorists.
It's thought the metal's stolen to sell on for scrap. The council believes it's taken by professional gangs.
We suspect there's got to be a vehicle with a very large winch or a chain or something, and they're just attaching to the bridge and pulling until either the base plates themselves fracture or the welds fracture.
The fencing is being stolen at night. Anyone who sees anything suspicious is asked to contact the police. Face Southwell, look east, Milton Keynes.
A Bedfordshire brick company is closing with the loss of more than 100 jobs. Hanson Brick UK